it's that middle ground where you're bridging the science and the people. And that's honestly, in my opinion, the most important area of communication of science in general.
Mhm. Welcome to today's episode of the Creators for Change podcast. I'm your host, Ari, and today I'm joined by my co host, Kayla, to dive into the importance of science communication in today's world. Social media is an incredibly powerful tool for spreading knowledge, but with that comes a responsibility to ensure that the information that we share and consume is truthful. Whether you are a creator or a consumer, being mindful of what we take in and share is key to using social media for good. Today, we'll explore how science communication can help us cut through the noise, promote informed decision making, and inspire positive change. So, Kayla, you have had quite an experience with science communication and really opening your eyes to the truth and how it's spread in today's world. So, Kayla, could you please start by telling us how you got into the world of science communication and what really sparked your passion for it?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, ever since I was young, I've been so interested in the natural world. I've always loved animals and plants, and I've just always been so curious about what's going on around me. And then once I got into college, I was a neuroscience major because I got super interested in the brain. I just really love figuring out how things work, and science is the way to do that. But what really pushed me into a career of science communication was actually when I was watching nature documentaries. The main one that really inspired me to get into science communication was called A Life on Our Planet by David Attenborough. It's actually his 99th birthday today, which is kind of fun. It's
What's
kind of
it?
crazy, 99 years old.
Wow.
But basically in this documentary, it follows his whole life. He had been exploring the world since he was a teenager, basically. He's seen every continent. He's seen change over a period of 70 to 80 years. And he kind of talked about it in that documentary and put the changes that he's seen into a perspective that anybody could follow and understand. And that really inspired me to kind of build a career where I could do the same to help other people follow this journey as well, I guess.
That's really amazing. And for some context to everyone, I also have a science background. I studied marine biology throughout college. And so maybe you resonated too with some of what Kayla said that, the natural world brought this excitement, this curiosity, this sense of awe. And I truly believe that everyone has a divine connection to nature, but a lot of people just lost touch with it because they're going through their day to day, and our everyday to day life doesn't require us anymore to be with nature. It's kind of like we've been stripped from it. We go to the grocery store to buy our food, we rely on these medications, but something magical really happens when you reconnect with that. It's kind of like, I don't know what area of the brain it is, maybe Caleb being a neuroscience major, but something in the brain, like there's more neural pathways that form, and I truly believe that it connects us with our true essence. So if you haven't gone on that journey yet, I would encourage you. It could be as simple as going on a walk in nature, maybe gardening. It could be, Kayla, do you have anything else to add to the list?
Yeah, I mean, there are like multiple studies that show that people who spend a certain amount of time in nature every week have enhanced physical and mental well-being. I think the threshold is about 2 hours per week. If you spend 2 or more hours outside every week, you will have better mental and physical health, which I thought is pretty cool.
That is
Um,
amazing. And it really promotes mental wellness, which, by the way, is the cause that Creators for Change is supporting this year. So if you want to contribute to our fund, we are associated with NAMI. And so we have a goal of raising 15 grand this year, but a little off topic, but on topic. So anyway, Kayla, I want to dive into this further. And so before we do, I think it's really important that the audience has a solid definition of what science communication is. Could you please share that?
Science is inherently like at its root very difficult to understand. It's a lot of numbers, it's a lot of complex terms, but the role of science communication is to turn that complex data and information into something that is understandable by the general public. You can do all the scientific research in the world, but it won't make any difference unless it's communicated effectively. David Attenborough likes to say that communication is the way to save the world.
I love that. And I also really want to emphasize that science communication isn't all about science and data and stats. A big part of science communication is actually speaking in other people's languages. So, what do I mean by that? If a scientist and a politician and a business leader are all in the same room, then they're not going to get anywhere if they don't speak in each other's language. And so, what that means is they need to talk in each other's language. So, certain terms, because if the scientist says, oh, the CO2 levels are rising, that's not going to resonate with a politician or with the business leader. Business leader wants to hear profits, revenue, progress. And we could still have that. We can have conscious business with the environment being preserved. So I just want to make that distinction because again, everyone, I have a background with marine biology, so communicating effectively was really important for making progress. Do you have anything to add to that, Kayla?
Yeah, definitely. I recently got a degree in science communication actually from the University of Bristol. And throughout the entire degree, our different learning experiences involved communicating different pieces of science to different target audiences, whether it's a business person, whether it's a politician, whether it's a kid in school, or whether it's your parents, or just basically anybody that you could think of. There's a way to communicate it to them. And that's the cool thing about science communication is that the other day I watched a video on the internet of a guy dressed in a trash bag and he was talking about microplastics. And there's like a target audience for that, you know?
Wow. And, and that's key, everyone, because did you watch that video on social media?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Creators for Change is all about using social media for good. And if you are going to go down the path of using social media to communicate science, remember that it's important to speak in people's language. So if you're talking to Gen Z, which is who we're often reaching with our podcast, with this show, then you have to speak in their terms. So keep that in mind. And Kayla, what would you say to people listening who want to pursue science communication, how important would you tell them that using social media to get the message out is?
It's honestly so important. A large percentage of people actually trust influencers more than like institutions. So that's why now more than ever, it's really important to be an effective communicator and to be communicating actual facts instead of just anything that you hear and repeating it, because that is really dangerous to society because while people trust influencers more than institutions in some cases, influencers might not always be reputable. So
Yeah, big time. And Kayla, you were sharing a five-step framework, which we'll dive into later about how to assess the credibility of science being communicated. But one thing I want to tell everyone is that you have to think, where is attention going? If you want to communicate science and be a leader on that space, be an influencer, have voice, you have to go to where attention is. If you want to reach people, business people, politicians, they're all on social media. I shouldn't say all, majority are on social media. And so you could put hours into writing maybe a scientific paper, which, maybe some people will read, but the amount of reach on social media is unfathomable. You're going to get way more eyeballs. Your voice is going to be heard way more. And that's actually one of the reasons why I stepped away from science and I went more into media. I still love science, but I understood the value in communicating it to the public, and I see the power in social media, which is why I do this. I'm not saying everyone needs to take my path, everyone can have a different one, but just for personal reasons, that's why I do what I do. So, Kayla, why does science communication matter now more than ever before?
Yeah, that's a really important question. So, we're with the internet, with AI, with social media, we are in an age of information overload. We're just being bombarded with facts left and right all day, every day. But there's also this issue of trust erosion that's going on where people don't know what to believe. Um, a fun fact is from a 2018 MIT study is that disinformation spread 6 times faster than the truth on Twitter, which is like absolutely absurd. Like, just think of the implications of that, you know? Misinformation and disinformation are really important to be able to identify because it affects public health, it affects the decisions that we make. So it's really important to have a framework for how to identify what is true and what is not, which we'll get into next.
I'm excited to dive into these 5 C's because it's going to help our audience really spot misinformation. And this is important both as creators and as consumers because I'll be honest, I remember when I started my brand, I started to communicate science. However, I didn't know these 5 C's that Kayla's about to share. And so I remember I even made the mistake of spreading misinformation. Now, I had good intentions, it's just that I didn't have that solid framework to assess if information was credible. So, Kayla, I'm really excited for you to dive into this because Kayla said something that we're in an information age. And yes, people are overloaded with information, but they're hungry for wisdom. They're hungry for the truth. And so, with that being said, Kayla, do you want to give an overview of these 5 C's?
Yes, so the first of the 5 C's is clarity. And what I mean by that is the information clearly presented? Are sources cited? Do you know where it's coming from, basically? The second C is going to be credentials. And that is who is behind this information. Are they qualified in the field they're discussing? That kind of analysis. The third C is for consistency. Does the information align with other reputable sources, or is it contradicting most of what your searches are saying? The fourth C is context. Are the facts cherry-picked or manipulated? What's missing here? It's always important to look at that. That's actually a huge one right now. People are taking like one tiny part of a paper and then just blowing it up, even though the rest of the paper contradicts like that kind of thing. And then the fifth C is confirmation bias, which everybody is guilty of this, but it's thinking about it in the light of, is this what you want to believe? Are you just trying to find something that confirms your beliefs, or is it something that's true?
I love that framework, Kayla. It's very clear, very straightforward. And here at Creators for Change, we don't just like to talk the talk. In other words, we don't just like to give you a framework without seeing it in action. So let's walk the walk. Let's actually use this framework right now towards a post that I found on the internet. So this post that I found actually is revolving around our cause of the year, mental health, which is important because mental health is often misrepresented or it could be flat out wrong. And so let's look at a post I found to see if it's credible. And this will help us navigate through the noise and find clarity. So, this post that I found online says the following: antidepressants are dangerous. Natural remedies are the only way to go. So, Kayla, let's walk this through the 5 C's. Let's start with clarity.
So yeah, if we're looking at clarity in this context, is the claim clearly explained and are there sources cited? The answer to both of these questions are no. It's just a blanket statement. It's really leaning more towards vague or sensational, maybe even fear-mongering.
Yeah, big time. And I could definitely see it because the post just said this statement. There were no sources cited, and it was just text on an Instagram carousel. Okay, so moving on to step number 2 of the framework, credentials.
Yeah, so who's making this claim and are they qualified to talk about mental health?
Okay, so this post came from an Instagram page about mental health, and they have a good number of followers.
Do they have any background in mental health? Like the page is about mental health. Does the person have any background in psychiatry or therapy?
That's actually not communicated. This is just a mental health page. It's faceless, so there's no face to the brand. They don't have a website that says who the faces are of the brand. So they're just posting on Instagram. Again, good number of followers, but I don't see a person or an expert tied to this.
Okay, so that's really important to keep in mind.
Okay, good to know. So let's move on to three, which is consistency.
Does this messaging align with other reputable sources?
Great question. When I saw this post, I looked in the description or the caption section, and there were no articles cited. They didn't say where it came from. It was just a blanket statement.
Okay, so that doesn't sound the clearest. Um, were you able to find any studies saying that SSRIs are bad or natural remedies are better than medication?
I didn't take the extra step of looking up reputable sources.
Mm.
I'll be honest, and honestly, I think that this is a trap of many people that they don't take that extra step.
Hmm.
So, and I'll admit it, I don't always have that habit of finding other sources. So I can't fully answer that. Maybe there are, maybe there aren't, but
Yeah, I mean, I think not everybody has the time or the patience to do that. So that's why this kind of framework, if you're able to be confident about 4 out of the 5 C's, it's probably okay. But if you're feeling iffy about multiple of them, that's when you need to be doubtful of the truth of something.
okay, good to know. So let's move on to number four, which is context.
Yeah, so is anything being left out? Is this statement cherry picked? I feel like this statement is very specific. And in terms of mental health, it's leaving out a lot of context that is needed to fully understand where a person's at, you know?
Yeah, and something just came to mind, and this ties a little bit too into number two, which is credentials. I do have a client who I help with their YouTube business, and they actually are a mental health professional. They're a licensed therapist. They've been doing this for years. I remember they one time told me that because they have a course about overcoming depression, they said that there's no one answer for curing depression. There's many different ways that you can cure depression, literally like hundreds. One person, their cure could be going for a walk. Another person, their cure could be spending more time with their family. And so I think that that context is being left out because the statement said that, that this is the only way to go, natural remedies.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much more to it, you know?
Right. And then moving on to five, which is confirmation bias.
Yeah, so confirmation bias is really about yourself. It's whether or not what you're seeing is something that you're seeking out to confirm your belief in something. So if you're somebody that is highly avoidant of medication, then you might see something like this and think, "Oh, I don't need to seek a psychiatrist for this issue because I'll be able to deal with it with natural remedies on my own." But speaking from personal experience, that doesn't always work.
Mm. I love that framework. I especially love seeing it in action because misinformation often plays an impact on our emotions. So it's really essential to be able to go through this process so that we know whether something is true. And especially with mental health, it's everywhere. And so we need to be really cognizant of what's true and what's not. So we talked a lot about mental health, Kayla, but what are some other common red flags or disinformation or pseudoscience that we need to be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. one of the we'll just go through a list of them that I created. The first in that list is emotional manipulation. If you read something and it just seems like it's trying to get a rise out of you, whether that's outrage or fear or urgency, that's kind of a signifier that you need to take a step back and think about what the purpose of this communication was. Another is no sourcing or sketchy links. And what I mean by that is maybe somebody did add a source, but it just takes you to like a Wikipedia page or something that's not a reputable source. One more red flag is false experts. Like we mentioned earlier, this influencer claims to be a mental health expert. This social media page claims that it has this expertise, but there's just no proof. There's no receipts, I guess, to show that they actually have any credentials. One last red flag would be language of just asking questions, and what I mean by that is language that sows doubt without evidence.
Hmm. Kayla, you really take the time to research science communication and see the information that's floating out. What I really appreciate about you, which I don't see too often in Gen Z, is that you are aware of what's going on in the world, what's being communicated. And so, are there any particular subject areas where pseudoscience and disinformation is really on the rise right now?
Oh, definitely. There's climate, environment in general. Honestly, I think that's probably the biggest area right now where we're seeing disinformation and misinformation, specifically regarding natural resources and extraction from the planet. Um, it's so important to figure out the motive behind this communication. For example, recently I saw a post from NOAA, which is the National
Oceanic
Weather
is
Service,
yeah.
yeah, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is in charge of the weather reports for the US and is a really important entity to informing citizens about the natural environment. And they made a post about why we should be deep sea mining, which is not really on brand with their previous messaging. And you can just tell from this kind of communication that something is off.
What would you suspect?
I would suspect that somebody is now in charge of NOAA that doesn't have the best interests of the ocean and atmosphere
Mhm.
at heart because deep sea mining is very, very bad for the planet.
Right. And everyone listening here at Creators for Change, we don't take a side when it comes to politics, but at its essence, politics is another word for policies. Policies that are put in place to keep our civilization and our well-being in check. That's how we see it. And so we can't ignore the reality that there are people in charge who genuinely have people's best interest. And when I say people's best interest as a whole, not just, it doesn't just always tie to one country, but a lot of policies that might be implemented in one country can affect people in other countries. And so we don't like to ignore that. But what Kayla is saying is that currently there's a lot of disinformation around politics and around things that are being communicated to sway votes, to sway policies being implemented in a certain way. So we can't be naive to the fact that there's some leaders who don't have others' best interest. And so I agree with that. There's a lot of disinformation in regards to the politics that are happening, not just in the US, but around the world. And so
Yeah.
everyone, especially when you're taking in that information, The five C's, your best friend. Keep that on the
Hmm.
back of your hand. Memorize it, use it.
Yeah, you explained that so beautifully.
We can't ignore it at Creators for Change. I know some people don't like to get political, and we don't either. We don't like to tell you what to believe, but we don't tell you what to think. We like to teach you how to think.
And how to ask questions.
Exactly. How to ask better questions, how to think, because a lot of people try to press their ideas. Like that article I found for mental health, that was someone kind of pressing their bias, their ideas. And so you need to stand guard at the door of your mind, and you need to be in control and take charge of what you accept as truth and what you don't, because that will directly impact your mental health.
100%. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Love it. So, with that being said, Kayla, I have another question for you. So, how can people who are creators, people who are using their platform to communicate science, what can they do to build trust with their audience while also staying true to science?
Yeah, there's quite a few ways to do this. The first is to use relatable language without dumbing things down. Like I said earlier, science can be its own language, depending on the area that you're working in, like chemistry, all the different chemical formulas, like that kind of stuff. You can leave that in the lab. But when you want to be communicating with your parents or your friends or your coworkers, you need to be speaking in a way that they can understand. And a beautiful way to do this is by using analogies. That is one of the best ways to help people understand a complex topic. Another way to build trust with your audience is to be transparent when you don't know something. Like even us at Creators for Change, while we do our research, we're not experts and we'll never claim to be experts. But we are kind of in this situation where we are learning together and we're open about that. And that's a huge part of earning trust with your audience.
Mhm.
Another way would be to use storytelling and data together. I like to say emotion opens the door and evidence keeps people in the room.
Mhm. Mhm. I
And
love
then
that.
last, yeah. Yeah, I really like that too because storytelling is just nobody's gonna care about something unless they can see themselves in it or they can feel some emotion behind it. Um, that's why storytelling is so important in any communications role.
Yeah. And just something else I'll chip in is I would just remind everyone to use the five C's as you're communicating science. Before you make a post, run through the five C's and, see if you meet everything. And even if you aren't an official expert in a topic, you could still report science in a really ethical way. And the way to do that is by everything that we've already talked about. So, what I want to know now is, what advice would you give to content creators who are listening to this? They really want to communicate science. However, they don't see themselves quite as an official expert.
Yeah, so my first advice would be to come at it from the perspective of being a curator versus being a guru. Um, Site experts collaborate and make information accessible like a curator, you know.
Makes sense.
Studies show that visual explanations improve understanding by 400% compared to text alone. So that's a really good way to educate. So maybe you're not an expert on this topic, but you're really good at turning information into visuals.
Yeah, and I'll jump in with that because, again, everyone's science communication, there's a lot of creativity in how you communicate. And so maybe there's an expert over here and they're really good at collecting data, coming to conclusions, and you are more the communicator. You take that information, maybe you put it into something visual, and then you post it. And when you do, you cite that source.
Mhm. It's that middle ground where you're bridging. the science, and the people. And that's honestly, in my opinion, the most important area of communication, of science in general.
Hmm.
My next piece of advice would be to learn out loud. If you're just researching a topic to post to talk to people about, be honest about that. Don't come into that post saying, I'm an expert in this. Say, I saw this post the other day and I was really curious about it. So then I went to this source and found out this about that, which led me over here, and bring us through the journey. And that's also storytelling, which makes it more compelling to the viewer.
Hmm.
My next piece of advice, like I said earlier, when people feel emotionally connected to a topic, they're much more likely to act. So use that storytelling for sure.
Hmm.
And lastly, it's important to use your platform as a bridge, not a pedestal.
Beautifully said. I want to give some advice to the audience as well, because some of you, maybe you're not like an expert in the sense of, oh, I'm a doctor, or, I don't have this degree or this certificate. However, I would encourage a lot of you to own your experiences and what you've already done. If you have an undergraduate degree, amazing, own that. If you have a certificate, own that. And if you have some type of experience, own that. If y'all remember, I mentioned in the beginning of this episode that I have a marine biology degree for my bachelor's. And so I own that. Even to this day, even though I'm not directly pursuing science, I own the fact that I was actually Indiana University's first woman marine biology graduate. Why? Because I just think it could be inspiring for other people, and it shows that I know what I'm talking about to a degree. Some of you have expertise, but you're not fully owning it because to you it seems ordinary. Oh, it's just no, it's normal that I had this degree. Oh, no big deal that I had this internship. But think about what you can own better and just talk about it. Not from a place of bragging, but from a place of, yeah, like I have this experience that helps me talk about this topic. Being an expert doesn't mean that you're perfect. Being an expert means that you have experience, you've taken time and energy to obtain information. I think they said, I forget the exact number, so if I butcher this, we could put a number on the screen, but I believe they said that it takes a certain number of hours before you become an expert in something. I think it's like 10,000 hours or maybe,
So, yeah,
yeah, something like that. So if you've studied something for that long, even if you've self-educated yourself, you can be an expert. I mean, I educated myself on digital marketing, which is a different business that I have, but I own that because I studied it. I studied it. I have experience with it. So for people listening, this is like oftentimes it's a mindset thing, big time.
definitely.
So, moving on. So, Kayla, how do you see the role of digital creators evolving over time and combating the disinformation out there and inspiring positive action?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, creators have a trust that some institutions have lost, which is really, really interesting and really powerful. It's like a lot of power in the hands of us normal people, you know? Um, Micro influencers are now kind of frontline educators. The top reason that most people get on the internet is to seek information, and a large majority of that comes from social media. So, as influencers, as creators, we're not just shaping trends, we're shaping worldviews.
Hmm. I want to add to that because I saw a post on Instagram of someone who was actually really credible to share. They were talking about the statistics behind these common news outlets, how many views that they get, and how many views that social media influencers and podcasts get. So in the past decade, there has been a massive shift, about 10, 15 years ago, the phase when MySpace was out there and Facebook was new, most of the attention was going towards news outlets. And so there's been a shift over the past decade where literally more time and attention is going towards podcasts, social media. People are turning to that. So as digital creators, we have a responsibility to put out good information that's honest, that's credible, and that inspires action.
That's so huge. Like, especially like you were saying 10, 15, 20 years ago, it was all the media. It was all Fox News, NBC, CBS. But as time has passed, we've found these different media stations have become a little bit biased, and it's resulted in a massive loss of trust from the public. Whereas with influencers and creators, you can find somebody that stands for what you want, then for stands for the same things that you stand for, or you can find somebody that is completely unbiased in everything that they're reporting. There's just so much more flexibility in the personalities behind the people that you're listening to and the motives that they have.
Yes, 100%. And from another standpoint, a lot of these news outlets, what they had to do to survive, because remember, they're businesses. They earn money from your attention because they play commercials and they earn ad revenue. This is my business brain coming into play, by the way. So these businesses, when this shift happened, a lot of them migrated over to social media. A lot of big news outlets, they have Instagram pages, they have Facebook pages, some of them have podcasts. And if you notice, I've noticed a trend. Maybe Kayla, you can add to this. So a lot of these news outlets, a lot of them migrated over to social media. And what I've noticed is that a lot of them are putting out posts that are biased, that spread misinformation. Whereas I notice a lot of these digital creators, I notice that they come from a more grounded place, from a place of wanting to help others and spread the right information. Obviously, not all of them, but this is just a general trend that I've seen. What are your thoughts on that, Kayla? Have you noticed a similar trend or maybe something different?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of, like you were saying, a lot of news media has become very sensational. They're just trying to buy views by posting a crazy headline, whereas you're so right. There are people out there just like us, just like the people listening, who just want to help. We just want to brighten our little corner of the world, and that really shows.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And hopefully everyone here walks away with that if you're using social media for content creation. Use it as a tool to spread light, spread good information, and to really use it to create the change that you wish to see in the world. That's why we go by creators for change, because we are creators. When I think of creator, we are creatives. We're people who think outside the box. We go against the status quo. We don't just accept the way things are. We work to make positive change and to make progress. And so that's the people who we attract, and we hope that that really landed well with you. So with that being said, Kayla, I kind of gave my final thoughts, but do you have any other final thoughts or any mindset shifts that you would like the listeners to walk away with?
Yeah, I just want to leave you with one more thing. It's my belief that it's our personal responsibility to be as informed as we can to make the best decisions, as our decisions are shaping the future.
That is a beautiful note to wrap everything up on. Thank you, Kayla, for sharing. And everyone listening, remember that you are a creator and you can make change. And here at Creators for Change, we are here to spotlight your voice, give you the insights to really amplify you, awaken you, and to again create that change that you wish to see in the world. So if you'd like to get involved with our cause, there's a lot of ways that you can on creatorsforchange.com. We have ways that you can donate to support mental health. We have upcoming events. We have challenges like the Happy Sticky Challenge. You can follow us on Instagram to see us do the Happy Sticky Challenge and to update you on any new podcasts. And we have a lot of great events coming up and amazing podcast shows that we have in the queue. So follow us on YouTube, add us on Spotify, Apple, and we will see you for the next episode. Thank you everyone for watching.
Thanks, everyone.